Raise your hand if you've sent an angry email to someone else. Raise your hand if you've written a few furious words and posted it to Twitter or to Instagram. Raise your hand if you've responded to your friend's Facebook post with a hostile comment in response. Truth is that the internet makes us angrier, sometimes a lot angrier. But the roots of this phenomenon are ancient. We're reading the Torah reading, which tells us about the story of Yosef and his brothers. And a great deal of the action is bookended by two phrases that stand in opposition to each other. When the brothers first see Yosef approaching them in Dotan. So we're told, Vayiru oto merachok. They see Yosef from a distance. And even before he can approach, the brothers decide that they want to murder him, ultimately deciding instead to sell him into slavery. But the hatred was there before he could even approach. And then at the end of the story, we're told that when Yehuda wants to argue for the life of his little brother Binyamin, we're told, Vayigash elav Yehuda, that Yehuda approaches. He walks forward. He comes closer. And as the Midrash explains, this is a language of reconciliation. When you stand at a distance, when the person seems to be more of an abstraction than a real human being, then it's easy to hate. When someone approaches and comes close, it's much easier to learn how to forgive and even to love. And a great deal of what goes on the internet, and psychologists have studied this, is that when you don't spend time with the other person, you see them as an abstraction. And in actuality, human communication was meant to be person to person. And when it's done in an abstract fashion, it's very easy for people to just unleash their anger and let it go wherever it's supposed to go. But this is actually the lesson of this week's Torah reading. There are times, perhaps, when you do need to communicate from a distance, but one needs to learn the lesson of Vayigash elav Yehuda, that you need to approach or write something in an approachable manner. It should be, as the Midrash calls it, a lashon pius, words of reconciliation and appeasement. I always try to make sure that every single email I send, it starts out by saying, how are you doing? Even if it's a difficult email. And always to end wishing the person a good day. Part of the problem with email is that not only is it tone deaf, that you don't understand the person's intonation and what they're really feeling, but it's also the person becomes an abstraction. And the only way to sort of counteract that is to do exactly what Yehuda did, to approach in a spirit of reconciliation, in a spirit of closeness, and to write at least these posts, these words, in a language of pius, in a language of reconciliation. One of the more powerful stories that has to do with the internet and reconciliation is the story of Megan Phelps Roper and David Abitbol. Megan Phelps Roper is the granddaughter of Fred Phelps, the founder of the Westboro Baptist Church, which is a horrific, bigoted outfit which hates Jews and gays and even the American military. And Megan Phelps was part of that church, and she would start posting her thoughts on Twitter to try to gain more followers. David Abitbol is an Orthodox Jew and a blogger, and he started to engage with her. And despite her hostility, he engaged with her with humor and with thoughtfulness. And after a process of years, he actually convinced her to see a different perspective. And ultimately, she left the church. And that's the lesson. The lesson is that when we see each other from a distance, all the more so, we need to learn how to approach. We need to learn the lesson of Vayigash elav Yehuda.